Hey y'all, welcome to GHATS Virtual 2020, and this presentation is going to be over off the field first aid 101. My name is Megan Rubel, and I'm one of the outreach athletic trainers for Memorial Hermann The Woodlands Medical Center, and I am full-time at Montgomery High School. Also helping me with this is three of my student athletic trainers, Allison Antony, Addie Rabel, and Reagan Sells. All right, first aid and wound care. This is essential just in general, on and off the field for any of our athletes. Number one, just safety in general, because, we're trying to keep all of our athletes safe, even if it is, COVID-19 or we're having a really high outbreak of staph. So, that rolls into hygiene and infection prevention. Our athletes, they really need to know their hygiene in general, that if you get a cut, an abrasion, anything like that, that we need to be covering it and cleaning it properly so that we don't get infected. And then also most of our athletes, depending on which setting you're in, whether it's junior high, high school, or even collegiate setting, they just need to know simple things such as, taking a shower and, putting some deodorant on, because sometimes they kind of stink. But anyways, the other things too is that just prevention of blood-borne pathogen transmission. That's probably one of the biggest things too, because we don't know, all of the information about all of our athletes as far as, do they have a blood disorder? Are they carrying something and you don't know it, or they don't know it? We just don't need to have blood being put on another athlete, and then now we're putting them at risk of, contracting an illness or an infection. Along with that too is just that we know our PPE, okay? That we have gloves. Gloves is our lifesaver when it comes to taking care of our athletes, when it comes to wound care. There are two different kinds of gloves that you can use. There's latex and there's latex free. Latex gloves, there's a lot of people who actually have a latex allergy. So normally, at least in our athletic training room, we do not have latex gloves. We usually go with like a nitrile glove, just so that we're not making anybody break out in hives, or, we have anaphylactic shock or anything like that. And then also there's sterile versus non-sterile. Most of the time in your athletic training rooms, you're probably going to see a box of gloves, and there's like 100 pairs of gloves in there. Those are your non-sterile gloves, just because they're all packaged together, versus your sterile gloves. Those are individually packaged, and most of the times you're going to be seeing those in a surgical setting over being in your own athletic training room. All right, now we're going to go into types of wounds. The first wound we're going to talk about is an abrasion. This is just the first layer of skin that's removed. So an example is turf burn. We see that all the time with our football athletes if you guys practice on a turf field or you play on a turf field. Other ways that you can get a turf burn, or a road rash, as a lot of people would say, is when you have a track athlete and they found the one lip in that track, and they trip and fall and they tumble all over the place and they get scratched up from the track. Or you even can get, those raspberries that they do kind of have, they start to bleed and everything. You can get those from the court, especially with like our volleyball players who are, diving for the ball, and our basketball players, they're going to scramble for a ball, that kind of thing. You can get a turf burn that way. It's just not probably called a turf burn. They'll, say that they got a raspberry, or maybe they got road rash. It just depends on where or at least the type of ground that they had fallen on that causes that type of wound. The second kind of wound is a puncture, which is a hole type wound caused by a pointed object. So a couple of examples is being spiked by a cleat. That is probably one of the most common things that I have seen in junior high. I have seen so many kids spike themselves with their cleat, and they're not even actually in their event. This is just them running around chasing each other, playing tag, and they have their spikes on. There's other ways that you can definitely get a puncture wound. That's just, one example. But the biggest thing with a puncture is that it is a high risk for infection, just because you are going deeper into the skin and possibly into the muscle, and whatever was on that spike, for example, now has been put inside your body. So this is a type of wound that we have to be very, very careful with, so that we're not causing infection to happen. And if anything of that sort does, occur, that we are taking the proper channels to, get this athlete into the doctor so that they can be properly flushed and cleaned out with better antiseptics that we have in our athletic training room. The third one is a laceration. This is a jagged cut caused by a sharp object drug across the skin. An example is the corner of a plyo box. Perfect example is actually one of my coaches. He was doing box jumps, and it was a metal box with the kind of turf top kind of thing. He missed the box and he drug his shin right across the metal part of the box, and he took layers of skin off of his leg. He actually had to get stitches because of it, and yeah, that was actually a pretty good one to show my student athletic trainers. I wish I had a picture of it still. With lacerations, though, those are another ones that are their high risk for infection, especially, like my coach, for example, he took away a large portion of his skin where we were almost seeing, second layer. Whenever he would move his leg, or if he was going in a dorsiflexion with his ankle, you were actually watching, muscles and fascia, what it looked like moving under his skin. So, you're at high risk. He's ripped it off. He's been sweating. Now he's getting sweat into the wound and dirt, anything else that, was in that weight room at the time. We have to keep it clean. And then we had to send him off so he can get some stitches. But thankfully, he's much better now. The fourth one is an incision. This is a smooth, straight line normally done by a surgeon. But you can also see this by a knife or a piece of glass. Or another good one is actually, if you get that simple paper cut, where it's a very smooth, straight line that you get as a wound. It usually straight. Glass can do it really well. If say you broke a glass or something, and now you're picking it up off the ground and you're not being careful, and then you catch an edge. The same thing with a knife. If you're cutting up some fruits and vegetables and everything, and we're not knife savvy and we cut ourselves, a lot of times that you give yourself an incision. The last one is an avulsion. This is where the skin is torn away from the body, okay? This can be from a forceful puncture wound with it dragging across the skin. I have not seen this, thankfully. However, that doesn't mean you won't. Sometimes you, like with the laceration, where if you catch the corner of a plyo box, you might actually tear the skin completely off, where you can't reapply it back on and hope and pray that the body is going to, heal it correctly. A lot of times there is excessive bleeding with this, and this is definitely a high risk for infection, because now, we're excessively bleeding there. An object has drug across your skin and it has punctured through. So, you could have, if it was wood, for example, now you have wood splinters on there that need to be debrided out. Or if it was, you were in a car accident and now you have shrapnel in you or something along those lines. Those are things that we have to take into consideration if we, for whatever reason, see an athlete walk into the training room and they have an avulsion somewhere. All right, supplies for the off-the-field wound care. I figured I would, put together a list of things that we would have in our athletic training room. However, this list may be completely different from what you have in your athletic training room and what you use in your athletes, and that is completely fine. But like I said, I just wanted to show y'all a list. So we have gloves, we have our gauze, we have sterile and non-sterile, which, it's the same as with your gloves. The sterile ones are individually packaged versus the non-sterile usually comes in a brick of, 200 4x4 squares of gauze. We also have our Hibiclens, which I have nicknamed monkey's blood. This is our, hospital grade antibiotic, antimicrobial antiseptic fluid that we can use for our athletes when we're cleaning them up. Also, we have betadine, AFDs, which is the fancy Paraflex that's individually wrapped that already has a gauze pad on it. Those are fantastic to use in a pinch when you're on the football field, but you can also use them off the field, in your athletic training room. Also, some Powerflex, sterile non-adherent pads, and coverall. The sterile non-adherent pads and coverall, those work really well with your abrasions, like your turf burns and stuff, just because they're so awkward and they're usually a large area that you're trying to cover. You can make your own Band-Aid using those non-adherent pads and coverall. So that's always really nice. And then if you really have to, you can, cover the whole thing with Powerflex if that athlete does have to go out to practice, that kind of thing. Also, we have our Steri strips for, our possible lacerations or those incisions that, you might be able to close up. We also have Tough Skin and Stick-It vials. If you've never seen a Stick-It vial before, it's a vial with a Q-tip on the end. The liquid is in the middle, and then there's a cardboard top that goes on it. And what you do is you break the vial in the middle, and it's a plastic vial, so it cracks, and then the fluid that's inside of there will seep into the Q-tip, and it will cause the Q-tip to, have the sticky glue on there. So then you can paint that onto your athlete wherever you needed to have it stick. So like if you were using Steri strips, for example, they'll stick to the liquid, the Stick-It, and then they'll be able to lay down nicely. Also, we have long Q-tips, tongue depressors, triple antibiotic, a cup if you were actually doing a Hibiclens and betadine mixture to clean off, an athlete, and then also, your biohazard bag for your soiled gauze, and then your really bloody gloves. This actually concludes the PowerPoint portion of this, and then there's a couple of videos that I have of my student athletic trainers who are actually going to be performing a couple of the wounds and how to clean the wounds. We have one student who will be doing an abrasion. I have another student who will be doing a laceration, and then the last one will do an incision. And thank you for listening to me. I know I'm not exactly the best presenter when it comes to PowerPoints or talking to my computer, but I hope you guys enjoyed this entire PowerPoint, and then I hope you enjoy the videos that go along with this, and I hope to see you guys in person next year. Thank you.